NATO vows to stay strong. American military presence in Europe shrinks. 250 million euros for European anti-drone systems as Russia provokes. Here's the latest, so you will be in focus. Subscribe and stay tuned. The EU will allocate 250 million euros to develop anti-drone infrastructure, the Polish Interior Ministry announced after meetings of European government delegations in Gdansk. Warsaw will push for increased funding. Moscow has stepped up hybrid attacks in Europe. According to Kirill Budanov, head of the main intelligence directorate of Ukraine's Ministry of Defense, the aggressor country is testing Europe's reactions, decision-making ability and willingness to use force. More details will be reported by Kristina Dombrovska.
Countering hybrid threats from Russia and Belarus was the main topic of a meeting of interior ministers from Finland, Denmark, Norway, Lithuania, Latvia, Poland, Germany, Sweden, and Estonia in Gdansk on October 28.
Recent events in Poland, Denmark, Germany, and Lithuania have shown that now there are also attempts to influence Europe from the air. The EU member states must have tools to detect and counter such activities. Particularly the member states on the EU's eastern external border play a key role when it comes to the security of Europe as a whole. That is why the Union's support for countering drones and other airborne threats is essential during the current funding period, which will end in 2027. Mari Rantanen, Minister of the Interior of Finland, from a statement on the ministry's website.
Just last week, Lithuania was forced several times to close the airports in Vilnius and Kaunas. According to the Lithuanian State Border Guard Service, since the beginning of 2025, there have already been 500 recorded violations of the country's airspace by so-called weather balloons launched from Belarus.
The Ministry of Defense will take action, and as of today, yesterday there were trial reconnaissance operations, but as of today the Army will take all necessary measures, including kinetic ones, to shoot down balloons. So they will start doing that, and they will start doing it actively. In this way, we are again sending a signal that we are ready, and we are ready to take even the most severe actions when our airspace is violated. We do not rule out the possibility of not only coordinating actions with our neighbors, but also talking about the activation of Article 4 of NATO.
After Lithuania closed its border with Belarus in response to the provocations, Vilnius stated it could, if necessary, also halt Russian transit to Kaliningrad.
We reserve the right to close transit if it is necessary to ensure our security. Of course, this will be done in coordination with European Union institutions and member states. Kęstutis Budrys, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Lithuania, on LRT Radio.
The Baltic states have become a testing ground for Russian hybrid warfare tactics, believes Estonian Interior Minister Igor Taro. Drones are increasingly violating the airspace of European states. In autumn 2025 alone, 1.5 dozen European airports suspended operations due to drone sightings. On October 27th, an unknown drone was detected for the first time over the runway of Alicante Elche Airport in Spain, reports the Spanish outlet EFE.
Russian aggression has escalated. It's extended even further into the west. Each month, Ukraine suffers more drones launched in attack. And last month we saw 19 cross the Polish border. Days later we saw Russian jets violate Estonian airspace. And while at the same time Russia mounted a concerted campaign to subvert Moldovan elections. Here at home, we continue to defend ourselves daily against threats that range from the seabed to cyberspace.
The Kremlin calls all these incidents provocations and denies any involvement. On October 28th, Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov stated that Russia allegedly never had and does not have intentions to attack NATO or EU states. At the same time, Moscow is demonstratively threatening the world with nuclear weapons. The chief of the General Staff of the Russian Armed Forces, Gerasimov, reported to Putin that on October 21st, tests were conducted of the Burevestnik cruise missile with a nuclear propulsion unit. Norway confirmed that the Russian missile was launched from the Novaya Zemlya archipelago in the Barents Sea. Reuters reports citing data from Norway's military intelligence service, reported by Kristina Dombrovska, UATV News.
The United States is reducing its military presence in Europe, withdrawing around 800 American troops from Romania. Washington also plans to reduce its contingents in Bulgaria, Slovakia and Hungary. NATO and the US are coordinating closely to ensure the alliance maintains its deterrence capabilities, a NATO representative told Reuters on condition of anonymity. More details will be shared by Larissa Petruk.
The partial withdrawal of U.S. troops from Romania is part of the Pentagon's defense strategy. Allies have known about this decision for a while. In early 2025, the U.S. president announced he wanted to cut the American military presence in Europe by 20%.
At the NATO ministers' meeting in Brussels, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth once again told European partners that now, with Europeans having strengthened their positions on the eastern flank and across Europe as a whole, and agreeing to better arm themselves, they will focus more on their own defense. The United States will shift greater attention to the Indo-Pacific region. About 1,000 U.S. soldiers will remain in Romania, helping to deter any threats and serving as a guarantee of America's commitment to regional security.
NATO officials emphasized that there's no cause for alarm. Washington is in constant contact with the alliance and its European partners.
My first reaction was concern. I thought our country would end up in a very vulnerable position if we lost this critically important piece of our national security. But then, listening to the minister and others, I started to calm down. And I think there are enough other levers at the European level. They might even try to soften the impact of this troop withdrawal. We also have our own army that can protect us. And there's help from other countries if the Americans leave. Maybe a common European army will be formed.
Europe is paying more and more attention to its own defense, due to the war Russia unleashed against Ukraine and Moscow's hybrid threats. Just recently, the Bulgarian government and the German defense giant Rheinmetall signed a deal worth over €1 billion. The plan is to build a factory for producing gunpowder and 155mm artillery shells.
Some might call the ceremony historic, others won't pay it any mind, and a third group will surely spare no criticism. What's important is that it has several dimensions, and they're not just about numbers, not about assets, not about production. This is a political dimension because this project wouldn't have been possible without the synergy that the European Union and NATO are creating for better protection of Europe in the name of its citizens.
Germany is allocating a record €377 billion to implement the country's largest rearmament plan in decades. In addition to purchases from domestic producers, Germany has no plans to give up U.S. arms supplies for now. Berlin wants to buy 15 F-35 fighter jets, 400 Tomahawk cruise missiles, and 4 maritime patrol aircraft from the U.S.
The Bundeswehr wants to launch about 320 new weapons and equipment projects over the next year's budget cycle. Of those, 178 have a listed contractor. The rest remain still open, showing that much of the Bundeswehr's modernization plan is still on the drawing board. German companies dominate the identifiable tenders with around 160 projects, worth about €182 billion, tied to domestic firms, from a Politico publication.
Europe is also responding to current threats. Lithuania has closed its border with Belarus due to increasingly frequent violations of its airspace by balloons used by smugglers. Because of these incidents, Lithuanian authorities halted operations at Vilnius and Kaunas airports several times in October. Vilnius officials stated that this is part of hybrid attacks by Moscow and its ally Minsk.
I fully understand that this will create significant obstacles and inconveniences for both our citizens and our businesses, but today we can't fail to respond to a hybrid attack aimed at Lithuania. We have a clear action plan with steps we need to take, starting with the ones we're implementing daily here in Lithuania. This includes the work of our diplomatic services, both in Europe and in cooperation with our allies in the U.S.
On October 27th, Lithuania closed its last 2 operational border crossings with Belarus. Entry is now open only for diplomatic transport and EU citizens returning home, reported by Larissa Petruk, UATV News.
What's your take on all this? Share it with us below. This is UATV. Stay sharp, in focus, and stay safe.